The United States is closely monitoring developments in Iran as international concern grows over a sweeping crackdown on anti government protests, rising death tolls, and fears surrounding the possible execution of detained demonstrators. Speaking from the White House, U.S. President Donald Trump said he has been informed that Iran has no plan for executions, addressing mounting concern over the fate of detained protesters. However, the president stopped short of ruling out military action, stating that his administration will continue to watch the situation and assess developments as they unfold. The remarks come amid heightened regional tensions as multiple governments move to protect their citizens and personnel. Earlier, U.S. officials confirmed that some American personnel were urged to leave the Al-Udeid Air Base in Qatar as a precautionary measure. Several countries have also advised their nationals to leave Iran or avoid travel to the country entirely, while international airlines are rerouting flights to avoid Iranian airspace due to the emerging security situation. According to a US based rights group, at least 2,400 demonstrators have been killed since Iran's crackdown began last month. That figure has not been independently verified by CNN. At the same time, an internet blackout remains in place across much of the country, limiting communication and access to information. A resident in Tehran described the atmosphere in the capital as extremely heavy and tense, reflecting the strain felt by civilians as protests continue and security forces maintain a strong presence. As governments issue warnings and implement safety measures, the United States has taken several steps in response to the unfolding situation. A U.S. official told CNN that some personnel at the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East, located in Qatar, were urged to leave as a precaution. President Trump also advised U.S. citizens currently in Iran to depart the country, citing safety concerns. These developments underscore growing anxiety about the potential for further escalation in the region. Qatar, responding shortly after the U.S. announcement regarding its personnel, said it continues to implement all necessary measures to safeguard the security and safety of its citizens and residents. The Qatari government made the statement following reports related to the Al-Udeid Air Base, emphasizing its commitment to maintaining stability and security amid regional uncertainty. Several European nations have issued similar advisories. Italy's foreign ministry urged Italian citizens to leave Iran and confirmed it is taking steps to protect its military personnel deployed across the Middle East, including in Iraq and Kuwait. Germany advised airlines to avoid Iranian airspace due to concerns over the potential use of anti-aviation weaponry, and German airline Lufthansa announced it would limit its operations to daytime flights to and from Tel Aviv and Amman. The United Kingdom has taken additional steps, announcing that its embassy in Tehran has been temporarily closed and that all staff have been withdrawn from Iran. The British Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office has advised against all travel to Iran, warning British nationals of significant risks associated with remaining in the country. Spain also urged its citizens to leave Iran using any available means and strongly discouraged travel to the country under current conditions. In the Gulf region, the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia called for increased caution among U.S. citizens and personnel, advising them to limit non-essential travel to military installations. Meanwhile, Air India announced that its flights in the region are being rerouted due to the evolving situation and the closure of Iranian airspace. The airline said alternative routes may cause delays, and flights that cannot be rerouted will be canceled, emphasizing that passenger and crew safety remains its top priority. Amid these developments, political debate within the United States has intensified. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, a close ally of President Trump, said he believes the president is serious about providing help to protesters in Iran. Graham stated that, in his view, attacking the Iranian regime would be the most meaningful form of assistance. He said that any action taken should aim to degrade the regime's ability to oppress protesters and embolden people to remain in the streets. President Trump, for his part, has not ruled out military action and has publicly expressed support for Iranian protesters. Iran's government has pushed back strongly against international reports and criticism. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, has claimed that a misinformation campaign is being used to exaggerate the scale of unrest and draw the United States into a conflict. Speaking to Fox News, Araghchi denied reports that thousands of protesters had been killed, insisting instead that the number of deaths was in the hundreds. He said that protests were peaceful for the first 10 days before what he described as a terrorist operation began. Araghchi claimed that terrorist elements led from outside Iran had targeted police, security forces, and civilians. He said Iranian authorities were fighting terrorists rather than protesters and accused those elements of attempting to drive up the death toll to provoke U.S. intervention. He labeled these claims an Israeli plot, though he provided no evidence. He also denied reports of executions, saying that hanging protesters was out of the question and part of what he described as a broader misinformation effort. Despite those denials, rights groups and international organizations continue to report significant casualties. The US based human rights activist news agency has said at least 2,400 protesters have been killed since the crackdown began last month, a figure CNN cannot independently verify. Amnesty International has described the situation as involving mass unlawful killings on an unprecedented scale, citing verified videos and eyewitness testimony. Against this backdrop, President Trump has issued repeated warnings to Iran. On Tuesday, he cautioned Iranian authorities against executing protesters, saying the United States would take strong action in response. On Wednesday, Trump told reporters that Iran had indicated there was no plan for executions. He said his administration had been informed by what he described as very important sources on the other side, and that it would wait and see how the situation develops. One case that has drawn particular attention is that of Irfan Soltani, a 26-year-old Iranian protester who was detained less than a week before reports emerged that his execution had been scheduled. According to a family member and the Norway-based human rights organization Hinga, Soltani's execution did not take place on Wednesday as initially expected, but it has not been formally canceled. Hinga later reported that the execution had been postponed. As international pressure builds, Iranians in the United States are closely following developments back home. Many are waiting for news from loved ones amid the ongoing internet blackout, while also using their voices locally to call for change and safety for people in Iran. These concerns extend beyond economic hardship to long-standing human rights issues that continue to resonate deeply within the Iranian diaspora. This combination of diplomatic warnings, military precautions, conflicting accounts from officials, and mounting international scrutiny forms the backdrop to an increasingly complex and tense situation. As governments, airlines, and international organizations respond to rapidly evolving events, attention remains focused on developments inside Iran and the decisions yet to come. In the next part of this report, we will take a closer look at the detailed international responses, aviation restrictions, and official statements shaping the global reaction to Iran's ongoing unrest. As international concern continues to grow, governments and aviation authorities have moved swiftly to adjust operations and issue formal advisories in response to the evolving situation in Iran. The measures taken reflect rising uncertainties surrounding security conditions, transportation safety, and the broader regional impact of Iran's crackdown on anti-government protests. These steps come as officials worldwide assess risks tied to air travel, diplomatic presence, and the safety of citizens both inside Iran and across the surrounding region. One of the most significant developments involves restrictions on Iranian airspace. The United States Federal Aviation Administration announced that Iran's airspace has been closed to all flights except for international civil arrivals and departures. According to the FAA, the closure began at 10:15 Coordinated Universal Time, corresponding to 5:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and was scheduled to last for 2 hours and 15 minutes. During this period, only flights with prior permission from the Iran Civil Aviation Authority were allowed to operate. Despite the closure, open-source flight data showed that several commercial aircraft were still airborne Wednesday night, heading toward airports in Tehran. In parallel, international airlines adjusted their flight paths to avoid potential risks. Air India confirmed that flights overflying the region are now using alternative routes due to what the airline described as the emerging situation in Iran and the closure of Iranian airspace. The airline said these changes may result in delays, and flights that cannot be rerouted will be canceled. Air India emphasized that the safety of passengers and crew remains its highest priority. Other airlines, including Germany's Lufthansa, also announced operational changes, limiting flights to daytime operations on certain routes in response to security concerns. German authorities formally advised airlines to avoid Iranian airspace, citing the potential use of what they described as anti-aviation weaponry. The directive, effective from January 14 through February 10, recommends that airlines do not enter the Tehran flight information region, pointing to escalating conflict. This advisory underscores broader concerns about aviation safety as tensions rise and as governments attempt to mitigate risk in an increasingly unstable environment. Across Europe, foreign ministries have continued to issue warnings to citizens. Italy's foreign ministry urged Italians in Iran to leave the country and confirmed it is taking measures to protect its troops stationed in the Middle East, including deployments in Iraq and Kuwait. The ministry said approximately 600 Italian nationals are currently in Iran, most of them concentrated in the Tehran area. It also noted that more than 900 members of the Italian armed forces are deployed across the region, with around 500 in Iraq and 400 in Kuwait. Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani reiterated that protecting Italian nationals remains the highest priority and stressed the need for constant monitoring of the regional security situation. Spain also updated its travel advisory, urging Spanish citizens to leave Iran using any available means and strongly discouraging travel to the country. The Spanish Foreign Ministry advised citizens in Iran to avoid participating in protests, refrain from taking photos or videos of demonstrations or official buildings, and exercise caution in public spaces. The ministry warned that individuals taking photos or videos outside tourist areas could be viewed with suspicion by authorities, and strongly recommended against capturing images of military or government installations or publicly expressing political or religious views, including on social media. The United Kingdom announced further measures, confirming that its embassy in Tehran has been temporarily closed and that all UK staff have been withdrawn from Iran due to security concerns. The British government said the embassy continues to operate remotely. The Foreign, Commonwealth, and Development Office advised against all travel to Iran and warned British nationals already in the country to carefully consider the risks of remaining there. The FCDO also cautioned that British and British Iranian dual nationals face a significant risk of arrest, questioning, or detention, adding that having a British passport or connections to the UK can be sufficient grounds for detention by Iranian authorities. Beyond Iran itself, the United Kingdom issued updated guidance related to regional stability. The UK Foreign Office advised against all but essential travel to parts of Israel and the occupied West Bank, citing heightened regional tensions. The advisory warned that escalating tensions could result in travel disruptions and other unforeseen impacts, reflecting concerns that unrest in Iran could have broader regional consequences. In the United States, officials continued to balance diplomatic messaging with military preparedness. President Donald Trump reiterated that Iran has no plan for executions, according to information he said was provided by important sources. However, he declined to take military action off the table, telling reporters that his administration will continue to watch and see how the situation develops. Trump said he would be very upset if the Iranian regime proceeded with executing protesters and emphasized that the United States would closely monitor events. At the same time, some U.S. personnel were urged to leave the Al-Udeid Air Base in Qatar as a precautionary measure, according to a U.S. official. The base is the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East, and the move reflects heightened concern about potential retaliation or escalation in response to unfolding events in Iran. Qatar responded by stating that it continues to implement all necessary measures to safeguard the security and safety of its citizens and residents. Regional warnings extended to Saudi Arabia, where the U.S. Embassy called for increased caution among U.S. citizens and personnel. The embassy encouraged limiting non essential travel to military installations in the region, underscoring broader concerns about potential spillover effects from Iran's internal unrest and the international response to it. As governments issue advisories and adjust security postures, international organizations and rights groups continue to document conditions on the ground. Amnesty International said mass unlawful killings are being committed on an unprecedented scale amid ongoing protests and an internet shutdown. The organization cited verified videos, photographs, eyewitness testimony, and medical evidence from multiple cities and provinces, including Tehran. Amnesty reported footage showing security forces firing directly at unarmed protesters and bystanders and described scenes of overflowing morgues, including a makeshift facility near Tehran. CNN has stated it cannot independently verify the total number of protesters killed, but the U.S.-based human rights activist news agency has put the figure at least 2,400 since the crackdown began last month. Amnesty said the severity and scale of killings since January 8 are unprecedented, even by Iran's historical record of repression during previous waves of protests. Iranian officials have rejected these accounts. Foreign Minister Abbas al-Rajshi insisted that the number of deaths is far lower and accused outside actors of exaggerating figures to justify foreign intervention. He also claimed that there has been no unrest in recent days and denied reports of executions, maintaining that such claims are part of a misinformation campaign. These sharply conflicting narratives have fueled international debate and intensified scrutiny of Iran's actions. While officials in Tehran deny widespread killings and executions, governments and rights groups abroad continue to express alarm, impose warnings, and consider further measures. As diplomatic statements, aviation restrictions, and military precautions continue to unfold, attention remains focused on the human impact of the crackdown and the international response taking shape. In the next part of this report, we will examine further developments related to political reactions, statements from Iranian and U.S. leaders, and the experiences of Iranians abroad as the crisis continues to resonate beyond Iran's borders.